Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call.
Mayor Caucus.
Here.
Mr. Caucus.
Here.
Mrs. Passio. Here. Mr. White.
Here.
Mrs. Kelly. Here. Mr. Root.
Here.
Ms. Pondish. Present. Mr. Bayshore.
Here.
And Mr. Reddick.
Here. Joyce, I don't think the microphone's on. There you go, red light. Okay, statement. Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the clerk in the following manner. One, it was posted on the bulletin board in the Borough Clerk's office on January 7, 2013, and two, it was emailed to the retrospect and the Courier Post on January 7, 2013. New business discussion for this meeting. First, we have, we're just going to run through this if anybody has any questions, different things. We only have one action that we are asked to do tonight. First of all, we have the approval of minutes.
I didn't send them out. I'm just completing them.
Okay, so please review them. That'll be on for the council meeting. Public hearing for ordinance 13, 15, 16, and 17 should be in your packet.
You want to read them?
I can look at it.
Well, 15 is the, changing the, adding a $250 charge onto the property maintenance liens. Second reading. 16 is the change to the cost for renting the Howard Williams building.
Okay, these are all second
Second
final readings.
And 17 is creating the position of record support technician.
Okay, any questions on those three ordinances? Okay, we have communications, that's what's in the front of the package here. We have resident Veronica Charles. Has everyone had a chance to read this? This was addressed to both mayor and council. One of the things we should discuss this evening is this resident would like a response from one of us. So if everyone had a chance to read it, it touches on a lot of different things. I don't know if a particular department wants to take it. I don't know if the mayor, if you would like to respond to her. Has she been in, did come in and see you or anything like that? No?
No, it's just that she sent it.
She said photos?
Well, there's pictures.
No, she didn't send photos. They're Keith's photos.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they're the other one.
Well, who's in charge?
Keith.
Well, Keith falls underneath me.
Well, then I think that would be your.
Okay.
I'll respond to her. I mean, it is written to mayor and council, so I didn't know. I'm giving the mayor.
Well, that's why I gave them out to everyone.
Okay, so you're okay? You're okay with me responding?
That's your department.
I'll respond. Okay? And then, well, she's also talking about the police too, though, Mr. White. Did you see that?
Yeah.
That she thinks that the police were,
Apparently, the police were by first. And she's assuming they called.
that the police called in. Chief, do you know anything about this letter of this resident?
Somewhat.
Would you like to tell, do you think it should be me, the mayor, public safety? How do you think we should handle this?
I don't think you're going to satisfy that woman.
She's asking for a response though.
I think it was because of Keith.
It's all because apparently she doesn't maintain her property.
Is that what it always?
I mean, her neighbors were up in an uproar. She brought her neighbors into court back and forth, and it was nothing but a nightmare. It's been going on for years.
Okay. I'll respond to her, and if there's something that, you know.
She had a lot in the garage.
Okay.
So there's previous.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, I think.
Keith has closed the complaint, I do know that, I did talk to Keith, he has closed the complaint. Whoever talks to him is going to have to, explain to her why we will not disclose it. So you can.
But this is an ongoing thing, you say, that she's been in front of the court several times?
With the neighbor.
I will respond.
It's all about the way he approached the situation, to, keep going out there and approaching it, be a little more diplomatic, talking to people instead of just showing up, taking pictures, getting cars, splitting.
Well, that's
May I
good.
add, may I add something there on that?
What's that?
Keith has given her ample time to make the corrections, and she just ignores them. So
Okay,
it's
well,
at
I'll
the
just-
point
I'll just
now
refer
where
to the
you
letter.
just act on it. I mean, how many times can you warn somebody to clean up your property?
I agree, but it was just, it looked like, from what I got, she was cleaning her garage out, she was rearranging her garage, put the stuff back in there.
She had been there helping her.
But what I think
He
the
always
chief,
has an excuse.
that's what I think the chief tried to say to us, that this is an ongoing situation, that you're saying over the past several years, that she's been coming in and out.
It's been a few, been a couple of years.
Even I'm aware of it, that it's been
Oh,
an issue.
I never been aware.
It's a neighbor dispute, it tends to
This
be.
is a neighbor, this complaint was made by a neighbor. And Keith tried to speak to her.
Keith got the call, I talked to Keith this morning.
Correct. Keith,
So the neighbor made a complaint,
Neighbor made the complaint.
the police went out, the
Because I
police
asked
confirmed
him-
it.
I was just talking to Keith about other stuff this morning, and Keith said that he had gotten a phone call and that he went out just to see it, and that's when she was like, as soon as he approached her, she said, get off my property, and it ensued into what it's ensued into.
Okay.
Does her property normally look like this?
No.
No, and he said that when he went back out, it was all cleaned up and everything was put away.
But I think that what Councilman Moore is saying is that there's a continuing neighbor dispute that goes on,
There absolutely
and,
is.
you know, I'm aware of this a little bit too.
I wasn't aware of it until I got this letter.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll respond to her. What else do we have? The resignation of the library board trustee.
I've appointed someone.
You have someone, okay?
Yeah, her name is Pat Smith. She's on the school board,
Okay,
and she just retired from this county.
okay.
What's her name?
Pat Smith,
Pat Smith.
Oh,
Denise
that's
Smith.
good. So she'll be
She's a
filling the
member of the school
unexpired
board.
term of,
happy over.
Kathy Oates.
That's the resignation letter. We have another resignation letter from the prosecutor. He has been appointed to Superior Court Judge of Ulster County. And then we have a resume letter from his previous partner, still current partner, who's been covering. And hopefully, I think this, this would be an appointment just to end the unexpired term. This would only go until December, and we can reevaluate that.
Were there any other resumes?
We didn't take any other resumes, if we came on
Didn't
resumes,
advertise.
we didn't really advertise or anything like this.
Advertise.
This is just, you don't advertise for a prosecutor, you don't have to. But he's been the backup, he's been covering for the past few months. I don't think we need, I think what we need is continuity in the court, just allow this to continue until the end of the year, and then we can reevaluate. So hopefully we can do that. New Jersey American Water, anticipated construction dates, hope everyone got that. They give us a, 5-month window. Sure gonna work. And then the nice letter from the fire company. And the generator is now, I think, Mr. Wright, is that correct? The generator's hooked up at the firehouse? What's that?
I don't have that update, but if you're saying.
I think it is. I think it is. And then we did approve at the previous meeting to get the 2 small generators for the pump station. So here's something that's a resolution that we need to act on this evening. It's purchase of the police software. Previously, we approved the shared service agreement with Belmar and the other communities. And what this is this is our expense for the actual software. Is this, did we decide, is this a bondable item? So is this coming out of the budget? This is bondable? Okay, this is an asset that the borough's going to buy, basically for $22,000. It upgrades the software and the hardware that we've had since 1988, some of it. And then $22,000 basically covers the entire department, and a maintenance fee of $3,300 a year.
It doesn't kick in until
And that doesn't kick in. So, is there any questions on this? Can I have a motion for this?
The software, I mean, what is it, they get new computers, it's a software.
Chief, could you please come up on this one? Mr. White?
This, what is, yeah, like new computers, it's a software that's backed up the computer system.
Maybe a couple new computers, but it's, the software is all everything that runs the system. includes a server which is located in Belmar, and we have to pay our share of the cost.
That's on the second agreement. There's two separate agreements. That's the $6,000. The server, but the $22,000.
You have the evidence module, everything we need to scan for all evidence and so forth.
Is this that e-ticket system too? or not?
Nothing to do with it.
Is this what they're calling shared services?
This portion of environmental.
Yeah, do you want to, elaborate a little bit? There's 6 towns.
6 towns, and eventually there'll be more. Right now we have Wyndham Mall and another town down south. I think Pineville's interested in it. Once more towns come in, it's going to lower the cost of what we're paying. And it's really a great tool because we're all going to be networked. We'll be able to access their system from our headquarters. In other words, if I get one of their residents, instead of getting on the phone or sending, I can just go into their system and see if they've ever had it before. It just costs a lot of time. It's something needed for a long time. It's a lot. Problem is that we waited so long though, that created a problem because you have to upgrade your computers from time to time. We never did. And because the data conversion of all the old system is so antiquated that nobody knows anything about it. And we can't convert the old data into the new system.
So, I thought the data could be brought in.
They can't do it. They tried their best. There's nobody that can.
So what does that mean? Is all that data have to be kept?
Computers.
So separate data for that. So how does the officers cross-reference that?
We just have one computer in the back and one up front, just to be able to access it if we need it.
So none of this software is inaccessible to any of the vehicles.
Some of the stuff, some of the data, they were able to extract out of the old system, but for the most part, there's a lot in there that they couldn't.
So they,
Is this just, when you communicate with each town, is this just the cooperating towns?
Right.
but that doesn't make complete sense. If someone has a state, don't the officers have the ability and the laptop in the car to run somebody and they'll know everything that goes on in the state?
They do, but they don't know under local laws whether or not.
Okay, so local. Now this also, the clerk, basically the software system that's currently being used in the police clerk's office has been there since 1988, is that correct? And so we have a new part-time clerk. The existing clerk was 25 years using the old software. So this is the first upgrade in 25 years for that software. So it should make that job much easier, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. This is a positive thing. I wish you would sell it a little bit more.
Speaking of the ticket system, Councilman White, the old system, when these guys write a ticket, it automatically, once they hit send, it goes right to the courts. We can't do that with the system we have right now, which is man hours to input all that information into the computer with the new system that we'll be able to put. It's going to save a lot of time. In the past, we have to sit there and scan all our reports. Everything has to be sent to the prosecutor's office. You get an indictable offense, that stuff has to be up there immediately because, the system's rolling. Now, once they do the reports, there's one button, you hit send, it sends everything right there. You don't have to sit there and scan everything and fax paperwork. It should cut a lot of time down for the officers and the clerk.
And I'm also under the impression that it allows for, data searches. So if we were looking up a particular illegal activity or something like that, you'll be able to search through that, where the old program, you couldn't do anything like that.
And vehicle maintenance programs in there, everything, you can track all the maintenance on the cars. It's really nice system. I shopped around, I looked at a lot of it. It wasn't just me, I took Chris Robinson with me because he's my computer tech.
I was just gonna say, who's doing all the training?
I do all my computer geek, but he is good at what he does. And I took him and we went and looked at a lot of different demos. And this one so far seems to have been the best one to pick.
And could you just name the towns again so everybody knows that we're working on? The lead town.
Oakland, us, Brooklyn, and Heights. Linden Walk was present yesterday for training exercise that I went to, so was Pine Hill and Winslow once again on board.
Okay, is that
Belmar, Brooklyn, Oakland, Woodland,
Woodland?
Woodland.
Woodland.
Runnemede,
and
Walton,
Pine Hill.
we're the ones sharing that server with Belmar. And then the software and this other stuff is separate. So there's two separate quotes here. We're writing a check for $6,000 to Belmar, which we already approved for the server, and all the towns are sharing that cost. It's about $37,000 and some additional costs. And then this is our cost that's unique to the Borough of Runnemede.
Our equipment.
Yes, we're,
I know Chris is good at, well, I know he is. Is there like training that goes along with this?
Yeah, every officer has to be trained. It's a 4-hour training exercise. Well, much time, in fact, I told him yesterday, I want it under 4 hours. Because you know what happens after 4.
well, I'm curious about that. Is there a way to send an officer to get trained, like a detective or Robinson, and then bring him back and he trains the other officers on our equipment?
Yes and no. It's time consuming. I mean, he's already overwhelmed again in there. And he's,
Now, the clerk is also being trained.
And
right?
who's doing the training? That's my question. Like, is there like a,
company.
that's what I was looking for, not somebody else that goes, oh yeah, I know this. It's the company that's got a program, okay.
You know, I think the advantage of having the company do that is if there's any problems down the line, they can always say, well, you didn't send your guy for training.
Absolutely.
So I think we have to go along with the fact that the company is offering the training free of charge, our men should go. So there's no liability down the line. I totally agree.
And
We just need to be careful with comp time.
That's why he's gonna keep it under 4 hours.
it says it's at least 4 hours training. I said, try and keep it up.
Well, once the program gets up in order, you're gonna save all kinds of time, right, Chief?
Hopefully.
It'll pay off.
It will pay. It will.
I think
My
that's,
time is down anyway. Like it's, my overtime's minimal.
you're over the department. Okay, I think, does that help you out, Ed? Is that,
Gonna help a lot on the people.
thank you.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it's gonna help.
You need me anymore?
No, we have to vote on this. I need if there's no more discussion, we need a motion.
I make the motion that we have the equipment purchased as a capital.
I don't think we need to just approve the
Just, yeah,
resolution.
approve the resolution that we have purchased this equipment.
I'll second it.
Roll call?
Mrs. Kelly.
Yes.
Mrs. Moore.
Yes.
Mrs. Passio.
Yes.
Mr. Ruth.
Yes.
Mr. White.
Yes.
And Mr. Kapadas.
Yes.
6 ayes.
Okay, the motion passed. So now we can generate the purchase order and take care of that. We have a resolution for a new street light.
Exactly, where is that going to go?
As you come in off of Clemens Bridge, as you turn right, if you're going towards Deptford, as you turn right onto Rowan, I'll be honest with you, there were 2 poles there. I gave both numbers for the poles. I'm not quite sure if it's the first pole or the second pole.
Is it on the corner?
It's right off the corner.
Some
because
bar.
It's very dark in that area, and I mean, I had looked at different areas before we made the decision for this, because I was honestly right down, in the gully there at Columbus Bridge, like, you know, where Bob Del Sordo's office is, in that area there, it's extremely dark, but I think a lot of that has to do with the trees that are overhanging over the lights, so that kind of really isn't us, that kind of falls under, I think it falls under PSC&G to trim the trees back, but that area, on Moran is exceptionally dark. It's very, very dark as you turn in off that road. So the only street light I think is all the way down the other end of the street. So,
And just to let you, just a
Like that's your
clarification,
street.
we used to,
Are you
nothing to do
familiar
with
with this? No,
And
it is a very,
Streetlights
it is
right
a
across
very
the
dark
street.
street.
they're
So
on
there's
down,
nothing on the end where the intersection is?
From my house, from my driveway to the intersection.
no, it's very, like, if I come through Road, like, as you're coming in at night, it's extremely dark.
Three houses. So the 3 houses, and the double, well, it's actually 2 of them are
Big
double,
lots.
double lots. And the one single lot, there's no light.
Is that where that young boy was killed?
a little bit further on.
Yeah, it's in that vicinity, and that whole, all of those streets, like, not so much Highland, but like Rowan, Holly, they're very dark right in there. And this, quite honestly, didn't come from him, and it didn't come from Dave Walker. It came from another resident that when I was out campaigning, the lady that lived on the corner, she said to me, "Is there anything we can do? It's so incredibly dark."
There's been a lot of
So, I mean,
complaints.
it's been a long time coming, and it was just something that was on the list, and I needed to get the ducks in a
Well, you
row.
could tell her,
Did it.
have her husband pull his truck.
I can't help that.
that.
Talk to the police about that.
So you can see it's, the lights cost us $8.77 a month.
Yeah.
In the past, we've eliminated lights. This is the first one I've been on council that we've added. And then what else we have? Resolution creating property maintenance lanes, that's typical.
We're gonna have more to adopt, and to be.
We're not going to adopt that, we're going to wait till the council. There was only one that we were asked to do this evening. You're saying you need more property maintenance lanes?
Yeah, she gave me a handful, just about 20 minutes ago.
Okay, so that'll be on, and then, discussion of hiring a bailiff and a police officer. We had a very last minute, was it a resignation or a vacation?
She said she just wasn't gonna be here.
It wasn't a resignation, it was someone said they're not coming in for the summer.
Resignation.
It sounds like a resignation, doesn't it? The person who was our bailiff just said they couldn't come in for the summer. So we had court on Monday night, is that correct, Chief? Was it Monday night court? We brought somebody in temporarily, and that young man would be a part-time employee for us. It's,
What does a bailiff do?
Protect the people.
Chief, you help us again? I don't know.
Got
what
nothing to
the
do
bailiff
with me, it's court.
does. The court?
Protect the people in,
So they just check people in that they, is that what it is? I mean,
it's not like a neck where you have the guy in uniform.
okay, it's not a police officer.
It can't be a police officer.
Can't be.
It cannot be a police officer, or a special.
Okay, so this is civilian.
Courtroom security, or something has to be handed to the judge many times during trials, and they'll take it paperwork and hand it to the judge as opposed to.
Okay. I mean, this was a job that was done by Joe Albright. Joe Albright.
But I
I
was,
sat in the courtroom.
and you saw the bailiff do
I've
it?
seen, yeah.
Who was the bailiff?
Joe
Joe
Albright was the bailiff for
Oh.
forever, and Joe passed, and then we had a part-time person that we had appointed, that, you know, just a reappointment. And then the court clerk recommended the gentleman that's on here now, which is Gregory Elkins. And he is,
I don't have it on mine.
I don't have the resolution, I don't have the,
No.
I didn't do the resolution. Because you
it's
know-
just a discussion item. The gentleman that worked Monday night part-time was Gregory Elkins. He is June Elkins' son. He came in for a couple hours, and we have to appoint him if we're going to hire him. I look at it as it's a part-time position.
It's paid?
It is paid. It's a minimum wage job. And it's only 2 courts a month. How much is it? It's $40 a court. And
Oh, it's a
it's
black.
an at-will employee. Well, we appoint him. So as long as nobody has a problem, I think we can put him on. We have nobody else at this point that wants the job.
Well, he already worked for us Monday night, so we have to appoint him anyway.
Yeah, we have to appoint him at least for one night, pay him $40.
And he is an at-will employee.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
And part-time.
He's the Caucus. Yeah, he came recommended by Teresa, the court administrator, said she needed somebody. She recommended him. We had less than 48 hours notice. The court's busy, we had to have somebody. Discussion of stop sign on Union and Hill Avenues. I think this was a recommendation. There were some complaints from residents. I think that the police went out there, made an observation. And this is a recommendation.
Right, but I've also gotten kickback from people that informed me that it might be an issue only because of and I'll be honest, I didn't go out to assess the whole thing myself, but that because it's coming down the hill, is it a problem with snow or ice or anything like that in the winter? I mean, honestly, I spoke to you, Ed, about it, and I also, did you go out?
I went out today, and I have something to add.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Quite honestly, John Dunn, you chimed in on it when I spoke to him and said, look, I need you to try to get a stop sign together. We might have to put one up. And he said, yeah, might not be the best.
Would you like to?
I agree with that, it's on a pretty steep hill. The other issue is 2 houses would be losing parking in front of their house. And you can't park within so many feet of the stop sign. They do have driveways, but they're,
Guys, the engineers report.
so 2 houses would be losing parking directly in front of their house, so that could be an issue as well. The third is, you just need a letter from us for an engineering study. Reducing speed is not a reason to put a stop sign. There's a history of accidents at that intersection. We could be making a recommendation based on that, but just to try and control speed on a municipal road, stop signs aren't warranted for that reason.
How about some, no speeding, you know, this is your only warning, 0 tolerance, so.
Let's try that, because there's nothing like that on that
Right.
street.
But, yeah, but my concern was putting stop signs in
There
there.
is a stop sign on Hill going on to Union.
Right,
There is a stop
but it would
sign.
be, there's three issues. One is, if you put a stop sign there, you're on a hill, cars coming down may not be able to get stopped.
That's right.
If it's snowing, cars going up may not be able to start if it snowed. And the other issue was the two houses we was parking. And the third is we just need some reason other than speed.
Speeding.
Not everybody has.
If that intersection has a history of accidents, that could be something that we justify.
Yeah, it does, to my knowledge, it
But
does.
just trying to control speed.
You don't know.
I think it was an
the
option to
accidents.
control speed.
Chief,
We'll have to look at something else.
Chief, you don't know of any history of accidents on Union and Hill?
It's just a drive.
Yeah, and it used to be a cut through, but, you know, I've been told by a few residents, it's not like that anymore. But once in a while, you'll get one or two, but that's in every street, so. Maybe we can put a sign or two that, you know, says slow down, zero tolerance.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah.
No problem. I'll talk to
Well, that can just be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just have to
Uh,
mark it out.
So then we're not gonna, okay, that's good. Discussion of Paper Street at Center Avenue.
Just for one
Oh.
second, so if we're putting a sign, where do we want the sign? Where would you recommend that we place, I mean, what's your recommendation on placing the sign? Because honestly, I didn't go out there, so I can't.
I just went out to look for a stop sign. I wasn't looking at,
Are we thinking
I don't know
about
where-
putting it on Union, is that what we're
I
talking?
think she's saying
Yes,
sign
yes.
the Union saying
Yes.
slow
They
down.
fly down that hill.
Is it
They fly
children
down
or
that
something?
hill.
They used to have, someone was blind on that street, they used to have a sign up, there was someone blind, I remember that.
Yeah, I'll work it out.
Hello.
I'll talk to Public Works, we'll figure it out.
I can work with John Gunn on that. too.
Absolutely, I'll get John can give me a recommendation of what he thinks.
The next item is discussion of Paper Street at Center Avenue. This is actually, what street is
That Martin's.
That mark.
this? This is the dirt.
Oh, the one by Gina.
Yes.
That mark.
Is it Denmark?
It is Denmark, but it's-
This has been something that's been brought up many times. This is recurring. This is, what they call it, vampire ordinance. It keeps coming back up year after year. But I think this is a time, we've done something different in the past. The council looked at an issue like this. This is a paper street. And right now, the residents kind of use it. It's partially maintained by residents, it's partially maintained by the borough. When we ran into this similar issue a few years ago, what we did is we sent a letter out to all the residents that were adjacent to the properties. And the borough is looking to, at the time, it was our solicitor Kennedy, sent a letter out to all the residents saying, we have this pedestrian pass, the council's deciding what to do with it. If we decided to grant it to you, and would you be willing to take it? And the pedestrian walks was extremely successful, at least for the residents. Every resident basically either took the property. One resident said that they wanted a neighbor to have it, and we were able to remove it and take care of it. That was a nuisance for the residents.
So what's the plan for this?
This could be very simple. The borough, am I right, could vacate this street, which happens, because I don't think there's any need to continue that street through, correct?
Can't.
Well, let me just ask you this. If you vacate it, in other words, it's going to involve 4 houses, they're going to take up a piece. What if one says, I don't want it, and the other house gets both partials?
Yes.
Does that mean they're going to allow to subdivide and put another house up there down the
If they
line?
went in front of the planning board and it met the current zoning issues, yes.
They'd have to pay taxes on that ground if they buy it.
Yes.
Paper Street with that.
Yes.
Yes.
But
Same-
if they can build on it, why doesn't the borough sell the ground?
Well, here's what
To a
happened.
builder.
Here's what would happen if the borough tried to do this. The borough, with the property on, our old borough garage, the borough tried to rent it. And the borough, at the time, the law, and correct me if I'm wrong, we had to put it out for a public bid. And nobody bid on it to do this. If we were to sell that land, we would have to put it out for public bid.
So,
What's the problem with that?
It's not a bad thing. We would have to, we could create 2 lots and do this.
what kind of work are we talking? What's the?
I personally would like to start the process. I'd like to start the process with sending a letter to the 4 residents. Because to me, the residents are using the land
All
now.
4 do, yeah.
If all 4 agree, let me just clarify my position on this. And I think Mrs. Moore was the same. The idea was, there are 4 residents that benefit from this piece of land. It does not benefit the borough at all, that we have to try to maintain this. We're never gonna put the road in. The argument that it might be another lot that we could squeeze a house in is a viable question. But I think we have an obligation to at least offer it to those neighbors that would be impacted the most.
Yeah, you're gonna sell it for a price.
We would not sell it. If we sold it, we'd have to put it out for bid.
They would have to be responsible for the taxes, but we would give them the land,
Yeah.
much like they did with the public
Yeah,
wall.
it's just-
So many people got, one guy was going, the other guy takes 2 lots, he sells 5.
Well, wait a second, we're not there. Now you're going to hypotheticals. All I'm saying at this point is if we, correct me if what was I going to say?
You're first gonna send out letters and find out what they're.
Yeah, we're going to find out if they want it. At that point, we would tell them they would have to be responsible for the taxes and the upkeep, and that would be simple. We would do a lot line adjustment, change that, new deeds, and be done with it.
And all four of them would come back and say, we don't want it.
Now, your hypothetical is about if they don't want it, then we would have to put it out for open bid and all that kind of process.
What was happening in the past?
What's that?
What book is about to vacate the lot?
Or the councilman, would you answer that?
Not anything really. It came up in the context that I had the Public Works Department out there clearing off the end that was closest to Detmar or down to Hirsch, close, because Bounds maintain that end by their house, and the other end seems to just kind of go crazy. And I had gotten a complaint from the resident that lived to the one side of it that it needed to be cleared, so they started to clear it, and it just turned into a disaster. It was just way more than they anticipated because it had been let go for so long. So it was just something, quite honestly, Nick approached me, said something to me. I said, I'm not against that idea. I mean, they did it with the public walks. I get it. I understand. All four of them could say they don't want it. I mean, part of them take care of it. The two at the end just
Don't
kind of
want
let
any
it
part.
go. They have no part of it. They don't want any part of it. And that could be the way it sits. They might not want it. We haven't really spoken to anybody about it. I mean, I honestly, in all honesty, because I'm out there, I talked to Gina, and I did say something to her in Bounds. I did mention it, and she was like, well, we would have to see where it all lays and what it will come down to, what it comes down to again. I mean, she wasn't opposed to it, but Gina certainly didn't say yes. It was just like, well, we'd have to see where it was.
I would think the first step should be, is it big enough to split into two, one on Center, one on Hirsch? And
What's the front?
at that point, if it is big enough to split it into the two,
That's
can we
where she
sell
comes
it?
in.
Well, here's
And
the
if
only,
we can't do that, then we offer it to the,
I hear you on that. They were my concerns. My concern is that these residents have been using this property forever. They've been maintaining it, they've been using it. For the borough to come in and turn a paper street, I'll explain that to the lawyer and engineer. I mean, you've got a paper street, it's been a paper street since the borough was created. Can we vacate a street to turn into the land? I mean, tell me the problems with that. Are there any?
Was there ever, and this is my question, but what, I just had before, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in, but my question was is honestly, of course, you've got the dealing with the resident, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under, but when I did speak to Bounds about it, they said that there was at some point, someone had approached about putting a house there, and that it did not meet whatever the guidelines were, that it was not large enough for them to put a house on
It is
that.
possible, it might only be 50 feet.
Well, I don't know that, that's what she told
So
me.
we're 50 feet wide.
And I don't
The
know
road
if
is
it's
what?
big enough.
Generally, the road is 50
It's 60 is borough ordinance. It's 50, it would require a variance. And I think that would be, a hurdle that the borough wants to go out and ask for a variance. Apply to our planning board.
so you're saying offer it to the homeowners first.
Sure.
Then if they don't want it, then we can.
Then we can talk about
Then we'll
it.
work.
All I'm saying
Or
is
we
send a
just
letter.
leave it the way it is.
The reason I wouldn't want to leave it the way it is because I think that the point that.
Well, you would have to keep maintaining the part that they don't maintain. That's
And
basically the
possibility
bottom
anyway.
line.
That's a possibility regardless.
And then there's a
One
line.
of the three, what if one of the three says, no problem, I'll take it, that's not a big deal, and the property sits with the other three, but we still have maintained it anyway. So it's.
Well, they've been maintaining it for over 50 years now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but once in a while, like I said, one of the problems is it's a road. So,
But it's not an accessible road.
It's not an
Because
accessible
it's a
road.
ditch. There's no way that it would ever be done, that it would close.
And the
into that
street-
one.
but the
There's no way it would ever
borough
make
is
that
responsible for that piece of road.
happen. Yeah.
And that's all I'm saying. We have exposure, we're responsible for this, we're allowing people to use it, which is fine. And you would argue if there was a road there, they would be able to access their driveways. They've literally built garages facing this road. So, for us to turn it into, that would be an argument that I was the neighbor next door, and I said, the town's gonna turn around and sell these as lots. I'd say, well, I have a garage that faces this paper street. So I would object to that. So the logic here is that the people have maintained this. We could simply add this to our tax rolls. They pay taxes on this. And we would no longer have to maintain it. We would no longer.
How many years were they using it as their own property? Because there's adverse.
Probably since the houses were built.
30 years, 40 years?
Before that,
Longer,
that's it, it's
longer.
always been
Is
there,
it 30
Eleanor.
years
Houses were
adverse
built
possession?
before these
Not
properties.
necessarily. It depends on the circumstances, and there's a lot of calculations that there are.
Nick.
Adverse possession, I can't say, yes, just 30 years, and that's the answer. Unfortunately, you have to look at, who owned the land, for how long, and there's other circumstances that go into that.
I'd rather see us be I'd like to see us.
The ones to the right,
You're standing facing it from her, she's the one to the right, that's a renter, that's
the
right.
other one's not around.
The other one is not a rental, she lives there.
Now, there is something else that I really didn't want to get into a deep discussion about this, but honestly, all I wanted to do was start off with a letter. We had a great response the last time we did this. Sending out letters to the neighbors gives them an opportunity to talk, come back to us and decide. You talked about if it became an issue, if it became a lot, we could put deed restrictions on it. There are so many things we could do, so many avenues we could look at. If, for example, one resident wanted both, we could put a deed restriction saying that they could not build on it, and things like that. So there are different things we could do.
I'm not familiar with this, but if you're saying somebody has a garage facing the paper street,
Yes.
and now you give the lot before that to somebody else, they may have an access problem.
I agree. The smoothest thing would be if all four people simply said yes. We would divide up.
Well, I guess we won't know
I don't
until we
think
make
you're
the
gonna
offer.
You're not good.
So we still won't know.
But then
until
if
we
that
make the
person
offer.
becomes an owner of that lot,
That's-
the person behind them has no longer access to get back there.
That's
No,
definitely.
it's only the
that's-
two front houses that face Center Avenue actually utilize it and keep it maintained well. The two houses behind that are on her side, that is a much steeper incline, so that tends to get overgrown.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where these garages.
It's a little difficult, yeah.
If they split it, Mark, then they'll have access to get to the garage.
Okay, that was my concern.
Yeah. And even the houses
Can't
that
cut
face
their
her,
access.
if they wanted to put a garage there, they could put a curb cut and easily put it in a driveway. No, our driveway's on her
There are
side.
driveways. There are driveways.
I just would like to get a,
And they might say no, because they're already paying $4,000 to $5,000.
I've used it for 30 years, I don't keep using it.
yeah. Well, what I'd like to do is at least get
They're not
a,
paying taxes on it.
give authorization, doesn't need the resolution, it's just, everyone kind of just, everyone's okay to have the solicitor send out 4 letters. Is there any discussion is everybody okay with that, to send the letters out? Fine?
Take the offer, take the offer.
Okay. Okay, we'll have the solicitor send out a letter. And then we'll evaluate it after that.
But there may be tax issues that come up here because of the
Well, what
fact
I'll
that
do
they're
is-
getting additional property and they're gonna have to pay for that additional.
When before we
property.
send the letter out, I'll have the assessor determine how much the land would be worth.
The public walk,
They're
when
paying
the
more
public walks,
taxes.
they-
We did that with
they
the
pay
public
more
walk.
taxes.
Well, I mean, you're talking 4 feet.
Yeah, but really probably isn't much more in the scheme of things, I mean, you're not talking.
Well, the public walk was actually 10 feet by the length of their property, so it was not an extra 1,000 square feet that most of those people gained. And it cost them about a little over $100 per year to get there. But I think there wasn't a resident there that the neighbors were.
Oh,
And there was one resident that
many
gave up
problems.
their right to their neighbor, so their neighbor ended up getting the full 20 feet. And that was, and then if you go by, they put fences up.
Oh, yeah, no, that was serious, that was a serious problem. This is not a problem. What this is a maintenance problem
Yes.
to some degree, that's about it.
And then lastly is a discussion on clothing drop boxes. Ms. Moore, would you like?
Yeah, that's me. I'd like to try to figure out some way that we can have some type of ordinance to limit the amount of drop boxes that there are in this town. They're popping up all over the place, literally between the corner of Oakland Avenue until you get to Deluxe Bakery, there are 9 of them. And that's not counting the 2 dare boxes that are sitting here. There are 9 of them. They are on every
There's 10
corner.
dare boxes.
No, I know that. No, I'm saying these are 9 independent clothing bins that are just showing up on every piece of property, every gas station, they're slapping them up all over the place. There are 2 sitting at the 7-Eleven, which I need to keep Knight aware of since the building is not occupied, that I'd like to try to get them off of the property. It's just my opinion, only my opinion. There's a certain stigma that goes with having these all over the place. And I quite honestly, if we're gonna have the 10 dare boxes, I'm more in favor of having the 10 dare boxes be the donation or the clothing closet that's affiliated with Trinity be the place that people can go and drop things, as opposed to these boxes all over the town.
And they're not always nonprofit. That's the
Exactly.
problem I
Not
see.
always nonprofit. They come across as though they are and they're not. And the people, from what my understanding is the people that own these businesses get some percentage of money, but it's only for having the box. It's not a percentage of the money that's being raised by them having this box.
It's like a little rental fee, like
$50
we put our
for
box
having
there
it.
and we'll give you $10 a month.
I don't know what the fee, but, I mean, some of them are bordering on residential areas. I mean, there's a couple of them that they're like right up against a residential area, right around the corner from a house. And it's just, to me, it's unsightly, and I just think that we need to do something to say, if the ones that are here throughout town are gonna stay, then fine, but no more.
I think what
We
we
never
can,
hear them when they're coming in.
that's
it.
the
it.
issue.
There's nothing.
You
that
never
says,
know. They just
here
pop- they
are,
put 'em
they just
there.
kinda drop
They
them
just-
over
I
there.
only know about the dare ones.
Right,
Oh, they're legitimate.
they're
Those-
fine.
I know they are.
Well, I think what we can do is, we can look at an ordinance that might limit the boxes to lots that are appropriate size, so they're not put on small lots, they don't interfere with right-of-way or site triangle, which
All
I
right,
believe.
just look at the Bridge Deli. Now, that box has been at the Bridge Deli ever since Vince owned it. Remember when Vince owned it? That box has been there.
She told me she was the one who put that in.
No, Vince had one.
I used to, that was there.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we can do is, we can look for an ordinance that might limit to
Other
certain.
towns have them. Barrington has one, Haddonfield has one, they have ordinances that limit.
Yeah, lot size.
To lot si- to a lot size.
Nonprofit status. We could institute a fee. Because what that fee would do is that, even if it was a nominal fee, a $5 or $10 fee, just so we know when they're coming into town. Because if we don't know when they're coming into town. And then we could limit even how close they are to each other. So there's a lot of things we could do, we could look at. But I agree that what happened is, that you're right, we weren't prepared for this. They started to come in. Now we're back behind the wall. I guess the only question I have is, there are existing boxes now. If we regulate it, can we not retro, but can we say you have only so much time to comply with the ordinance?
You can act, ordinances, in addition to regulations and statutes, you can determine whether it's going to be prospective or retrospective, okay? You can limit it as, for instance, something that was there as of January 1, 2012, must be removed within a certain period of time. Anything, thereafter must come through the borough with respect to maybe registration, maybe they have to show the size of the box, and so you have knowledge of that. There are many different ways that we can potentially.
So we could even clean up the ones that are out there if they're on inappropriate lots that we're determining are appropriate lot locations. I think this is a good idea.
And while we're on the clothing bin boxes, and the chief happens to be here, I need to try to relocate those 2 dare boxes at the library. I don't want them gone. I'm not against them, I just need them gone from that particular spot.
Get my email.
Because that's where the dumpster's gonna go for Belmar to pick up the trash, because we're gonna pour a
Belmar.
pad, and Belmar's willing to pour the pad, and there is nowhere to pour that pad
On
other
every
than
spot.
in that spot.
See, that's because of the apartments and all over there, that's why.
Well, it would be an enclosure.
It's, we're gonna make an enclosure around it, because our ordinance does say they're supposed to be enclosed anyway, so we're gonna try to make sure that it does get enclosed. It's just, those 2 dare boxes sit between 2 parking spots, and for us to put in the pad, we have to kind of cut a part of the grass out and pour in a concrete pad for the dumpster to sit on, that we can put an enclosure. There's nowhere else for me to put it, and we have the same issue at the RY, because we're trying to get it off of Elm Avenue, where it's sitting on the grass, and put it down where we took the building down on a enclosure that it can be closed in and fenced with a gate that locks so that people can't dump in it and
Well,
everything
it's
else.
dumped in the dumpster.
So my thing is I spoke to Chris Robinson today, and I just want to move them.
I sent you an email.
Oh, I didn't get it.
You got it.
What did he say?
I
I
didn't-
don't think he's here.
I did, I realized afterwards and I sent
Oh,
him the
okay,
rest.
all right.
Sorry, if you came, it was on my way
The
here.
problem is that those Dare boxes are the property of Dare.
Right, and Dare I spoke to.
They
Dare.
are the only ones that move them.
Correct, a guy named Mike moved them.
The only time that they will move that, they'll move them, but
Yep.
but not ASAP. The next time we'll be able to move them is when they come down to empty them.
Well, she told me.
And when will that be?
Wait a minute, wait.
Well, he said when they come to empty them, so when would that be?
I'm not
That's
100%
not-
sure.
Well, here's the
But I don't
thing.
think it's gonna make the date.
Well, here's what I would say. The dumpster is going in, so if the bins are not removed, we will move those bins.
And
They're on borough
then-
property.
Then you're responsible for damaging them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know.
That's.
So borough property will send them notice, we'll have the lawyers
My
send them
answer
notice.
wasn't, Nick, was just to slide them over where they are to make room for doing that pad.
But if we slide them over, it takes a parking spot. The thing is, that I spoke to Patty at Dare, she said that there's a guy named Mike, she can notify him. Quite honestly, what I was running up against with the lady from Dare was that she would not give me any consideration of it until she spoke to the Dare officer, and then I spoke to her again today, and she said that the Dare officer said that it had to go through you before she could get the approval to have them moved.
Well, what we would like is for you to tell the DARE officer, to tell them to move the dumpster.
That's not a problem. But
Okay.
I don't know when they're gonna be able to do it. That's the problem. I don't think it's gonna be.
And it could be moved to some other location. I mean,
They're not blocking.
When do they plan on pouring this
parking
pad?
places.
Where they are.
Belmar showed up today.
Slide them over,
They would.
They showed up today to look at the markings, and,
Well, I know Kathy never wanted them there, that's why I'm asking.
Oh, no, well, I
From
said
the
they
beginning, I mean,
Nick.
after all, I was on the
Nick.
library board too.
Yeah.
So
Nick,
I-
they're not that heavy.
This has
there's too many conversations.
They're
Sorry,
not that heavy.
this has nothing to
Get
do
the
with.
road crew to lift them and move them just out of the way.
You just said we would be responsible for them if I had to remove
If you damage them. If you pick them up, if 4 guys grab them, I'm sure you could probably lift that.
them. Miss Moore had
10
the
feet.
DARE willing to move them immediately. Something transpired between her conversation, and then she called back and said, I can't get them moved without the DARE officer's approval.
She told you immediately she would move it?
She didn't say immediately.
She
She
said,
said, I can have them moved, and then that was the end of our conversation. Then she called me back and she said, I can't do anything without the DARE officer's approval. And I said, okay, well, I said, I'm not trying to outrank the DARE officer. I said, I just want them moved from that
We'll just
spot.
have to find out when they're gonna pick up next.
That's fine, I'll call her back. I mean, she was very helpful, and like, I called her and talked to her today. She was very helpful. She was more than willing. She said that he told Chris, and I said to her, who did you talk to? Because I wasn't sure if it was still Chris. And she said, I spoke to him, and he said, it's gotta come through you. So then I talked to Chris, because I tried to, even if we had to relocate them from that area, I had already reached out to the Acme to say, look, if we need to remove them from that spot, are you guys willing to take the additional 2? And I couldn't get through to anybody there. Everybody was on vacation.
I don't think Acme's gonna be there much longer.
well, they have 6 bins there now.
I got 6.
And the other day I drove by and there were actually bags in front of the
Oh,
bins.
yeah, they
Eight
should
there.
put
So 2 more bins, if we move the 2 bins from the library down to the Acme, and I think the
But
Acme,
my thing is I don't think it's the Acme that has to give the approval, it's the property owner. And I went through the Acme to try to touch base with them to say, is it okay? And he's like, well, let me see what I can do, and then.
well, I think Joyce could get you the property owners.
Just.
Is that Joe?
Isn't
I
she
thought
still-
so.
We could try to find that out.
I'll reach out to whoever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion? Because that's all we have for this evening. Anything else from the committees? Oh, I forgot, my apologies. The engineer.
I have 2 things that might affect next week's meeting. One is with the Orchard Avenue project we're doing right now, we were installing a mid-block crosswalk to help get from the church parking lot across the street to the sidewalk. We need to get an ordinance to allow that mid-block crosswalk so that the police can enforce it. So I don't know if you can have first reading next Tuesday or not.
Want to add that? Can you give us a legal description on that?
No problem.
Okay, so-
And the second, which I don't think we have to act on right away, but DOT has announced that state aid applications for fiscal year 2014 are being accepted now. The deadline is September 20th, so we still have time. I'll work with the Director of Public Works and Director of Engineering, come up with some candidates, and we can talk about that. So by September, as council meeting, we would have to have a resolution for us to submit. So it's just something to think about, but I don't think you have to worry about it for next Tuesday. And that's all I really have that affects next week's agenda.
Okay, we talked about the bailiff, we didn't talk about the police officer.
Oh, it's not on my agenda?
Yes, it is.
Oh, bailiff and police officer, see, thank you. Director, do you want to?
Well, we have the application for a new police officer that we're thinking of hiring. And the Public Safety Committee did meet with him. He's presently working for the Metro in Camden. He's very qualified, he's fully trained, and we'd like to have him installed at our
The
next,
earliest
yeah,
would be-
yeah, on August 7th. So we would like to have that resolved so that we can move on.
Yes, is, Mr. Wright, we're good through civil service?
Yeah, the way that works is because he's reachable on the list, once we make the appointment, then we do.
Would he be sworn in on the 7th, or do we have to wait for him to resign from Camden first? Do you know the process?
Yeah, you can't hold the position in 2 towns.
So what do we do?
Swear me after.
We appoint him on the 7th, and then, well, here's what I thought had happened. We have to send him a letter
Can we appoint
offering him a
tonight?
job.
Can we appoint him tonight? And then it's, no, we can't appoint him tonight.
Doesn't he have to give 2 weeks' notice?
We give the date that he's available.
That's what it is.
We could appoint him as of that date. Can we do that?
I think that would be the smartest, yeah.
Or whatever the date is.
Well, do we have a letter from him saying that he wants to take the job?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
We have a letter.
That was given to us about, that was
Okay.
before the interview,
Okay.
before we had the interview.
So we need a letter to him saying that we're offering him the job. Is that where we're at, I guess, at this point? We want to appoint you? If you told him we're going to appoint him?
I haven't even talked to him, other than the interview that I gave him.
As borderline personnel, but if it was me and his vote, I would not submit my.
Letter of resignation until he
I
was...
had a confirmation.
That's good, I wouldn't either.
Well, how do we agree this evening to authorize the administrator to send him a letter saying we're going to offer you this job? And it'll start on a date to be determined based on his resignation from the other force. And then we'll swear him, we have to swear him in at some point. We'll just set that up. In worst case scenario,
So we wouldn't be able to swear him in on the 7th.
well, what we could possibly do is, we should swear him in before school starts. So maybe we could do it at the next caucus, which is right before the school
We
year.
can swear him in any night as long as he's finished.
Oh, we could have a public meeting and.
Yeah, you can do that.
We can have a special meeting.
You know what
I enjoy whenever Jack can come to the meetings.
Well, you can switch a couple.
Is that workable?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah, we could
Is
just
that
have
workable?
it.
You'll send a letter?
It only
I'm
takes-
disappointed because we can't have him for the 7th, but I will work with him and we will get it done, at least within 2 weeks.
Well, I knew there was a difficulty because he had.
Yeah.
Chief said
And
he's
he's
sworn.
still
in.
working, he's still working.
Yeah.
That was the-
You gotta give him time to resign, unless he can't be done for that job.
We'll see how that. So we'll send him a letter, we agree?
Yes.
Mr. Wright, did you have anything to say?
I was going through, state my report.
Council meeting, fine. Any other council people want to report anything? Solicitor, did you have anything?
I did want to make one comment about the property situation and the maintenance fees that we're charging. I did have an opportunity to talk to a gentleman who has some properties, he's a lender, and he has some properties in Cherry Hill, and I understand that they passed an ordinance just recently when a lender pursues foreclosure, for the first year, they have to pay $500 registration fee. If they are continuing with the foreclosure and the foreclosure continues to the next year, it's $1,000 registration fee. On the third year, if they still haven't foreclosed on the property and taken title and sold the property, it would be $1,500 and on and on. I just wanted to mention that because I think in our town, we do have a number of foreclosures that are not proceeding. And if we put some restrictions and some, how do you say, make a disadvantage to the lenders to keep these foreclosures on hold, we make that available to us so that we can have some kind of restriction on them, that they can't just keep these foreclosures on hold for years, rather than have them move forward. Maybe those penalties would be effective. I'm just bringing it up because it was brought to my attention this week about the new ordinance in Cherry Hill. They just passed it.
Well, do you think those penalties will make them sell that house faster and lower the price and be willing to take less money for the house, and therefore causing lower income coming into the town?
The properties are not being maintained. The situation is that the banks are holding up on these foreclosures. How many years have some of these homes been in foreclosure? And no progress is being made. So I think if we hold their feet to the fire, these lenders, and make it uncomfortable for them, we might have some kind
That
of,
was part of the point of doing the 250. That was part of
I
it.
put that.
On top of the fee anyway, that was part of that, doing that 250 was to try to say to
oh,
them, this is going to.
they already do that. They already do that they do have the liens again. But now they are actually going to the lender and saying, the first year's of 500, the second year's 1,000, the
And
third
my
year's
question is,
1,500.
has it shown any progress?
Well, it's a brand new ordinance.
Well, I think it's very similar to the property maintenance. The idea is, we're charging $250. Some towns are charging as much as $500 to cut the grass.
Right.
So the idea is, and I think what Cherry Hill's trying to do, I can't speak for them, but I think they're just trying to increase more and more money to motivate people. I think that's what it is. You know, if you hit somebody up for $250 a week to cut the grass, all of a sudden they're going to cut the grass. If you hit them up for
Joyce, do we?
$5,
I'll tell you, tonight John came in and brought me some more property maintenance liens. There was one particular property that he gave me, and the ordinance isn't enacted yet, that has 3 separate property issues that were done at 3 separate times. Every time that was done, there would be $250 added on to each one. So you're talking $750 without the charges that you're charging for your manpower, your equipment,
Right.
the gasoline that you use for the mowers, whatever it was that you did. So that's going to, every summer, it's not as much in the wintertime, but every summer, that is going to.
Well, Mrs. Snell's trying to, these are fees that are automatically going to be there, even if they maintain their property.
yes.
These fees are going to be there to help them sell it and turn it over fast.
Do we have
And I think it
enough?
also-
It's not a punishment, it
You know,
is just a fee that's going to hit every year to make them turn that house over fast.
Are we notifying them of
Instead of
foreclosure?
No.
What the clerk is, there's a new statute that's passed. What they're required to tell you. For instance, if you have a mortgage on a home, you miss two payments, 3 payments, whatever the criteria is, it generates a letter to the clerk saying that, I want to notify you that this property is in danger of foreclosure. Now, the homeowner also gets that notice. If the homeowner borrows money and pays for their
We don't get those.
payment, I don't know that that's been removed. So they could be, I got quite, for a space of time, I was getting them, how many, Rich? I was getting them, every day I was getting them in the mail. That's slacked off some now. But that could be, you missed 2 months of rent, and they send me a notice. Or it could mean that they're never going to pay again.
But they don't send that notice when they
They
say,
pay it
the
up.
homeowner's called up and, you know.
I would like our solicitor to look at the statute for the foreclosure procedure, because I believe that within 30 days after a summons and complaint are served on the unit, as well as the owners, a letter has to go to the clerk of the town
So that's-
that foreclosure proceeding has started.
Right, but they could pay up, and I would never know that.
Oh.
I get no notice.
That's what you
But
said.
I think that's what the
But I think this
statute
would
says.
trigger this $500 fee.
Well,
That notice would trigger the $500
Then
fee.
30
If they didn't pay
days-
up, we would then,
But who are they registering with? Who are they?
It's
right with the clerk, the municipal clerk. Yeah, that is responsible to take that
They don't
$500.
have a mortgage on the property. What if it's only the homeowner that,
but that's not a foreclosure.
that's where?
Man, that's not foreclosure. You know,
Do we know
if there's
what
no
it is?
lender,
Well,
if there's no
they
lender.
foreclose for any other reason,
No other
aren't
reason.
they?
Well, taxes.
Tax certificates, tax liens.
But that's any holder foreclosure,
Yeah.
that's different. I get notified of that.
Yeah,
So there's no other, what about any kind of liens that they might have that are not property taxes?
Construction lien?
Construction
You
lien,
can't
medical,
foreclose.
I know
No,
that
you
there people
can't.
have medical liens, so I'm never, can they go after their properties for that?
if the property is sold, that judgment will show up on a title report. This is getting too.
Well, yeah, why don't we ask our clerk to talk to Ms. Sappos over at Cherry Hill, maybe she can at least tell us how that's going. Right? She's your president of your clerks association. She can easy to know. Maybe she can let you know.
A lot of people were
Okay.
at work
Wait, before we
too.
close it, I changed my mind. have something I want to talk about. I want to talk about the dog park. It seems to be a hot button, that this dog park that we've created down on First Avenue. So I want to try to clarify for everybody that's out there as well as everybody that's here. We started this whole process was started between a discussion that occurred between Councilman Root and myself, because he's in charge of Parks and Rec. It was brought up, everybody was aware of it, to the best of my knowledge. If I'm wrong, please say something. I mean, it was.
I didn't know where it was, but I found out.
And how did you find out? Because it was mentioned at the caucus meeting. I mentioned it. I'm sure that we can, it was brought up somewhere along the line. Everyone seemed to be aware of it.
I wasn't.
No, then you're the only one. And I apologize then if you weren't aware of it. Because everybody else seemed to, it was never a secret meeting. It was just discussed that what are we going to do with this dog park?
Yeah, I was there meeting.
Well,
Well, I think the issue arose because the playground was in such, it just wasn't really a play, yeah. It was in disrepair, and you said, we gotta do something, and that's when she suggested the dog park, and I thought that was a great idea. Because the playground wasn't being used, and at least with the dog park, we're having some kind of environmentally friendly
well, the
kind of.
issue seems to be, when was the decision made? Who was the decision made? It wasn't something that I quite honestly, and maybe I'm off base on it, it wasn't something the mayor, you did know about it, I did speak to you about it at one point. It wasn't something that was secretive, it wasn't something that was hidden, it was out there, it was just a decision.
It was a great
made,
idea.
and it was talked between, Mike and I spoke about it. That original playground that was down there on First Avenue was redone by Lisa Scaramuzzo in 2006. She was a former council person, she redid it at a cost of $11,000 to put in the swing sets, the teeter-totter, and the 2 ducks that were on the spring, the rocking ducks. What remained of that playground when we went down there to do it was the teeter-totter had been broken, and the cost, Mike investigated the cost for a new teeter-totter would have been $1,500 just for the teeter-totter. The 2 ducks remained there, and there were 2 swings left on the entire swing set. The park had been vandalized. It had been reported to me when I first became on council that there was graffiti on the benches. That was removed. We did what we had to do. The grass was in the park. It wasn't being maintained. It had just become a hangout. So with that being said, originally a dog park was spoken about in town that goes all the way back to March 2010. That it was going to be placed down at Beaver Branch. Never came to fruition. Nothing ever happened with it, and it just fizzled out. So this is a change. This is an overall lifestyle change in a positive direction to take this park. The cost for what has accomplished at the park so far, which has been done by Public Works, has cost $1,984.05. And that includes us installing double gates and a holding area for the dogs once it's all in play. So hopefully this will clarify all the position that we are on the dog park, and if there's any question, I spoke to the mayor, and we have a tentative date set right now for August 24th for a ribbon cutting. I reached out to PetSmart and talked to them, hopefully, and I also reached out to Candy County. So hopefully the 2 of them, the animal shelter and Candy County, we can come together and we can have like a little event that will last more than 5 minutes of cutting the ribbon and everybody going home. Public Works has done above and beyond. Most of the stuff that I've gotten down there has been minimal cost. They utilize the bracket for the teeter-totter. The fire hydrant we're getting is free of charge. John has a piece of tubing that he can utilize somewhere else, and he's going to cut off a section for us, and we're going to be able to utilize it there. So it's been something Public Works has embraced, and the park looks better already. And I'm happy to report that I think this is a good thing, and hopefully we'll have people down there that have the dogs down there and it'll do well.
It'll be great.
Parking as well. I
I don't know.
You know what? I want to say the area, if you're facing the park and you're looking at the woods, the area to the left was an area that had been blacktopped at one point and did have access to park.
Okay.
The picnic table's been removed. It's going to be placed down at Green Acres. I removed the picnic table and I'm going to relocate it at the playground at Green Acres.
Is anything safe from the playground?
Yes, everything at the playground is at Public Works, and it's going to be placed at the softball fields as soon as we clean an area, because Mike has talked to the people at softball, and he's decided that there's a small area that we're going to place the 2 remaining swings and the 2 rocking ducks, because there is nothing else. parking area, they went down, Public Works went down, and they cleared that entire area. And they pushed everything back and cut back the trees, and quite honestly, it's surprisingly larger than anyone remembered.
Well, so overgrown for so long.
Absolutely.
And
So
they're
they
gonna
cleaned
have
that area up.
Trash bins?
There are trash bins, we located the dog waste,
Good.
the dog waste thing, whatever.
Dog waste.
Yeah, that's it, there it is. We relocated that from a different location, they dug it up, they put it in the park. The benches that were originally in the park were still in the park.
Good.
So it hasn't cost us very much money, and it is definitely a positive thing. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not something that was some side thing.
And where did the money come?
The money came out of Public Works as it
I
sits
know.
right now.
I know.
As it sits right now, it's come out of Public Works, nothing's come out of rec as it sits right now.
But don't hold me to the gun on replacing the duckies, because the springs might have to be replaced.
Yeah,
And it just might.
they're bad, they're really bad, the ducks came out, they're so old.
I thought you were going to take the place.
Yeah, they're bad.
I'm sorry.
They're
I'm just
bad, I
saying.
know. But, so that's where we are, and, that's it. So, thank you for indulging me.
No problem. Okay, did anybody else have anything? Okay, this portion of the meeting is open to the public. Anyone wishing to speak, please come to the microphone, give your name and address.
My name is Mark Martino, live 578 Sherrington Lane. We're having some issues with the ground behind my property, which is originally Park and Recreation, I guess it was. There's constantly kids back there smoking pot, drinking. And we're back there every day cleaning stuff up. Grass is, as of, what was it, 2 weeks ago, it was probably up to your knee. Public Works would go and cut the path just to get to the garage. The rest of it would be grown up to your knees. I mean,
Is it still that way?
no, actually, my neighbor was up there cutting it. This was, this last week, went out there, he back there with his tractor cutting the grass off. All behind my house. I'm like,
Who did that?
bottles. Mr. Farrow. I mean, bottles everywhere. I mean, just recently.
I only
They
was
had-
asking because I was back there and it just looked beautiful, so.
I don't know, I don't know when we were, but.
Last week.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean,
How long was it before, since Public Works cut it?
I don't know, I work all day, so I don't know what
All
time
right,
it
I'll bring it,
is.
I'm the director of Public Works, so I'll bring it to their attention, and I'll make sure that it gets
I mean,
addressed.
it just becomes a straight hangout back there for all the kids. I
And
mean,
it's always
drug
been that.
dealers constantly, I mean,
It's
you know,
always
junkies
been
back there.
Well, Mr. Martino. What was it? Oh.
I'm sorry.
You know, I will bring this to the chief's attention too. And
Is there lighting at all back there?
if they can't get a patrol car back there, at least maybe someone can walk back there.
Yeah, but
And-
by the time they pull down the street, they have access either from the Acme side or from the path along their house, and whoever's there is gone by the
They're
time they
going,
pull
yeah,
up the street.
right.
I mean, there's one access point, truly access point, which is how Public Works is.
Has this always been a problem or
It's
is it
been a
just
problem
recent?
since I was 3 years old.
Always.
Oh.
I mean, it's been vacant since like 86. I mean, it's always been a problem.
Yeah, they used to have a basketball court there.
Yeah, that basketball court, there's more glass on it than there is the recycling plant. I mean,
This is a very similar situation, borough property, maintaining, things like that.
yeah.
The question I have for you though is, the last time we spoke, that you understood some of the difficulties that the borough had.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had any progress on your side?
Yes and no. I mean, you know what we're dealing with.
I do know.
I think it's moving in a positive direction, but I mean, it's gonna be tricky. I mean, it's not gonna be as easy as.
Well, it's an easement. There's an easement. Isn't there a restriction or an
Yeah, there's a
easement?
deed restriction on the property for Parks and Recreation. for
Right,
Joe
right.
Sanders.
But who do you work with?
Ask Mr. Martino.
Well, I don't know, I mean, it seems like you guys had a conversation.
We'll have that conversation.
Okay, well.
Mr. Martino, if you want to elaborate,
I
Mr.
mean,
Martino's come to many council meetings.
There's a deed restriction on the property, which I
Yeah.
found out.
Yeah, but-
The owner of the deed restriction is Joe Sanders. I mean, I've known Joe for a long time, and we're trying to work something out and maybe lift the deed restriction so that we can divide this ground of property.
But isn't that Borough? Let me go.
No, it's not Borough.
This
It is
is Borough.
Borough.
It's federal ground, deed restricted by Joe Sanders.
Correct?
But it's Borough property,
What is that?
and it was deeded
What
as
exactly?
recreation.
That's part of the approval process.
As the approval for the ground and building development was approval for recreation.
But there is no recreational use back there.
Well, I thought the rec was a nice place back there.
All right, and we
Yeah,
can
it
do
used
it
to
parking
be.
on my street.
There used to be,
They destroyed it.
I mean, they destroyed it back in the eighties. They destroy it now.
What it was, right? That's what it was deeded for, right? So for them to build a development, it was deeded for recreation,
What's the point of that? I mean,
or for recreation.
okay, well, then what are you gonna do with it?
How many acres?
There's also there's a building back there connected to my house, gas and electric. I mean, if you really wanna get into this thing, you can.
That's disconnected.
No, it isn't. It's still in my pound. You show me that it's disconnected.
Well,
Right
they're
now.
disconnected at the building.
Doesn't matter, you still have wires under my ground, they're connected into my panel, they're live going out.
Well,
That has nothing to do with me. So, we're just going back and forth, the same stuff over and over again. We can either eliminate the problem, or we can keep having the problems.
how do you suggest we eliminate the problem?
Well, first, I want all the electric disconnected from my house. And the gas lines stored out of the ground, because they have nothing to do with my property.
Well, let's, if we.
Why are the gas and electric to?
The property was originally put on a 99-year lease, I guess it was, back when,
You gotta remember, you got a bunch of new people.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, what it was
Bear
a
with us.
99-year lease to a guy named James from years ago. He maintained the property, and he put a building back there. Well, part of the process of well, I've never seen the letter, but from what I've been told, because nobody can find the letter from what the old lease was that when something would happen, either he would die or sell the property, in the result of him either having to take the building down, or...
Well, that's what happened. The building, I
died.
have a copy of the lease somewhere, Alan, where
Yeah.
Rich has it too. And the building should have been taken down and
Yeah,
removed.
should have been taken down,
But-
put against the
and
the bank
actually-
owner or whoever it was at the time. And it wasn't, because it was never enforced by the town to do so.
So,
So now we're here talking about a building that shouldn't even be there in the first place.
we're going to take it down.
I mean, hey, it's,
But don't,
I mean,
using that
it's,
I
building.
mean, I was the agreement, but if it wasn't followed up.
by the township, it wasn't followed. So I mean, now we're at this spot where we can either close off the walkways like we've done everywhere else in the town, eliminate the problems that are back there, because the problems are gonna occur in that ground no matter what. Whether the building's there or not there, you're still gonna have the junkies back there, you're still gonna have the kids drinking back there, you're gonna have bottles all over the place. Because there's no way to
Well,
really
why don't you
conceal it.
enforce it? I mean, that's the police did.
That's it, what, the police patrol back there?
Yes, they do. We drive back there every night, different hours every night.
Yeah.
But it's, you know,
I know. It-
you don't know
listen,
when.
No, I
I mean,
get
it's
it.
a
I
bunch
get
of kids, whatever it
I
is,
get it.
they're
We're all
scattered
that age.
around. I mean,
They don't know how to hide.
every day, 5 o'clock, there's different kids yelling through. I mean, kids I've never even seen in town before. I've grown up in town since I was born. I lived on Sheffield Court. I mean, one street over. Kids I've never even seen before. Not even parents that live in there. Just out of the woodworks are coming through.
Yeah.
They go right through, they go hang out behind Acme, back forth, they're in Triton, they're back. I mean, it's,
Some of the kids are from Glendora.
yeah, I mean, they're coming from all
They
over.
know that, once they know there's a place they can go, they go.
I mean, and I have lights in my backyard.
As Park and Recreation, I guess it would sound dumb here, I had no idea this was I knew there was a field back there.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was under Park and Recreation. What I can do as Councilor of Park and Recreation, the whole, to keep people out of it, I don't know. But I guess what we can do is we gotta take care of the situation of people being back there. So,
I'll talk to my guys about maintaining it better.
I'll talk to
Yeah, I
the
know, I
police.
know the guys.
I'll talk to the police about maybe putting undercover people back there.
There's really nowhere for them to go. It's just an open field that backs up to my house, 3 other houses.
There's gotta be a solution.
What if we put a new, light up?
Could you state your name and address, please?
My name is Bob Farrell, 580 Sherrington Lane. My question is, when they closed those public walks,
When we close them.
when you closed them, people came to one meeting, is this true? And you closed it when the neighbors came and you allowed them, you said, we're going to close that. They don't have half the problems we've had over the years. I don't understand how you were so quick to close that, and the problem we have is major. We have major, excuse me?
what's your solution?
Well, you have to close the access of getting to it. That would start. Off of Sherrington Lane,
Fence it all in?
stop people having access to come through. There was an officer today with showing me a picture of a guy that robbed Acme. He ran through our development, I think the Officer Wooten, is that his name?
Yeah.
He was, yes, he is.
He's always like that.
And I don't understand. how you-
Where's the access?
Well, let me bring everybody up to speed. I apologize.
It's been a 3-year process.
Yeah, let me bring everybody up to speed. Quickly, the public walks, residents came, started to complain. We investigated, we walked down there, we looked at it. We went back to the residents, we did exactly what we're doing now. We asked the residents to tell us, what they wanted. We sent them out letters, they all said it, and we got it done very quickly. This was a very similar situation. I brought this to council's attention at the time because I was director of public works. I noticed that it would take way too long for the guys to cut the grass back there and things like that. The situation why the borough took that land back, the borough basically improperly turned it from recreation because they saw it was such a problem because there was no parking, there was no access.
Vandalism.
So they decided to get rid of all the recreation. They tore everything down. And a resident, the gentleman you're talking about, came to the town and said, look, I will cut the grass, I will maintain it, but I can use it as I want. And he built this shed. So this whole deed restriction of the recreation was kind of blown off for 25 years. The gentleman passed away, his property went into foreclosure.
Well, it went to his daughter first.
And
then
she-
They went to foreclosure.
I went for foreclosure. So at that
And
point,
you purchased the house?
And then I purchased the house, I grew up one street
So
over.
that's why the electric and gas is going to the building?
Yes.
Because he had that.
Well, then the title company must not have did their job when you bought the property, that there was a restriction on the property. Right?
There is no restriction on my
I mean,
property.
no
There's
restriction.
a restriction on your property, it was never linked back to the.
The problem was-
Because it was.
Well, then we.
is that the lease was with an individual.
But the building, yeah, we can use the
The
building.
the lease was with an individual, it was not with the property. Am I correct in saying this? So what happens when that individual died,
That was the end of the.
that was the end of the lease. And then this foreclosure, and Mr. Martino has just walked into a bad situation with his gas and things like that. So the borough, myself, and members of council started looking at getting rid of this piece of property. It's landlocked,
Yeah, I know that.
it's a problem. We went to the neighbors, just like we did this. I don't think we sent letters because there's only 4 neighbors. All the neighbors from that property showed up at this meeting. They said,
It was like 2.5 years ago.
Didn't you talk to Triton about this land?
I will get up.
They don't want it.
That's
They don't
later.
want it.
We're still a year ahead of that.
See, that's right.
Just you, I need to get
We're a
it.
year ahead, we're still a
If
year
everybody
ahead.
wants me to get, I'll get you up to date.
Sorry.
Even, well, previous to this, Councilman Moore, Mr. Bernie Moore, went to Triton and said, Triton, do you want to use this land? Triton said no. The residents showed up, all of them showed up and said, we would like to carve this up. We would be responsible for it, we would fence it in, we would maintain it, we would pay taxes on it. Is that correct?
Hey, I remember that.
So, then there was a change of leadership in the council. It did not get done. Mr. White, you took over.
Yes, this-
You then found out that there was other issues, there was a lease, there was deed restrictions, and at that point, it died, correct? Then, recently, Triton reached out to the council again, myself and Mr. White spoke with Triton Regional. They showed interest, but they've done nothing. And no one, I think I told everybody once, and nothing ever happened. It was just simply, what is going on with the land? We know there's a restriction, we know there's concerns by the residents. Everyone has to be talked to. We know that Public Works has been utilizing this garage, I don't know how well or how it's been used.
Just for storage.
Just some storage. At this point, I think, once again, we have to look at this, and getting back, Mr. Martino talked to me and said, I said, this is where we're at. We have this deed restriction, which I've never seen. I've never seen the title search, I've never seen anything on it. So I'm gonna be more proactive on this. But at the time, we're under the impression there is a restriction. Mr. Martino is friendly with the gentleman who put the restriction on when the property was built, and that brings us up to tonight.
Like, you listening,
Yes.
Triton High School, Sherrington Lane, the Acme, what's the street you were?
Sheffield Court.
Sheffield Court, it's just like.
Sheffield Court's the first street, you got the Acme access, well, to the strip,
Yeah.
and then Sheffield. And then that goes back to dead end, so that's where the property.
It's
goes
back down to dead end, yeah.
And
It's back to
And
the
then
back.
does it go back that way?
all the way to the fence of Triton High School.
Right up to
Sheridan.
Triton.
Yes.
Okay.
And then there's an access easement from Sherrington
Yeah.
that allows our trucks to drive back there, but also allows children to walk through, or other than children to cut through.
Yeah.
And
It's not really the kids, I mean, the kids are back there throwing trash and everything, but it's more than just kids.
The kids only play. It's the adults that
Yeah,
are.
but it's allowed for a little cut through that's been used for nefarious activities.
You're saying about that paper street. I mean, they don't have the problems we have.
No.
It's gotta be addressed, and hopefully in a.
The hurdle we have here is if this restriction is accurate, I'm assuming it is, that's the hurdle. We have a gentleman,
Well, how would it go to Triton with the deed restriction?
I don't believe Triton realized that that wouldn't be able to go to them. That's why I think they backed off. I think the property is,
So if we can get the restriction changed,
if we can get it changed, I think this board, the council can look at it.
Who would it have to come before? The planning board?
No, the council does.
We can do it. We can just say,
Let's, Mr. Baker.
Planning board would probably have to get involved in some degree.
Yeah.
Because that's part of your master plan, is to
Yeah.
have open space there,
Right.
and to have recreation for that. So it's all tied together.
Yeah.
I think the planning board would understand
We don't
that
know
for
anything.
30 years, this has never been a viable recreation facility. Once the Acme was built, it made it very secluded back there, right? There's a line of pine trees. I will say my son plays for flag football for Runnemede, and that is a field that some of the kids go and we'll practice there. But you see it, you have to park in Acme's parking lot.
yeah,
And if Acme were to simply put a fence up, that would be the end, that would be the end of that. There is no access, there's very little,
then there's no parking.
there's no parking. So it wasn't well thought out when it was put in the first place.
That's because he took away the one that was in front before they built the homes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And that was
that's
the,
true, because that was my field.
yeah.
see, this is, and that's
Yeah,
the
my
problem,
kids
that was
played
given
there.
up.
Yeah,
And
my kids played there.
and this is not, like you say, Mr. Root, you've lived here your entire life, and you never know that there was a park.
We're from the other side. No, we're from the other side.
Well, it's pretty far, that half mile.
Yeah.
By the time I rode my foot that far, I was.
That's it. We're from the other side.
All right, so that's something to look into.
Yeah, I'll take it, I'll go back and start up again. At least, Mr. White and Mr. Bayshore can at least show me the records of the deed restriction, maybe the
So
planning
what
board's
does it take to
decision.
get rid of the deed restriction? That's my
Is
question.
it still Joe Salmon's property?
Yes.
It's,
Well,
it's somewhat convoluted, we'd have to start out looking at the deed itself, looking at the parameters of the restriction before we could make an informed opinion on the appropriate course of action to attempt to remove that particular restriction. So I would reserve comment on that certainly until I would look at the paperwork, and then we could comment on it more appropriately and direct you what would be the best course of action.
And this is why nothing's been done, because we were under
What
pressure,
if
this
we
is
just
very
did
difficult.
another 99-year lease? And
That
let-
wasn't legal to start off with.
Well, I'm just saying, it was done once before.
I don't think I would want that personally.
But once again, I'm not about to just.
Joe,
Salmon.
Salmon's still alive?
No.
Oh, yes, he is alive.
Oh, he is, yeah.
Tell me,
Anybody
he
that
can-
lives in Runnemede.
he wants to build all these houses.
Why
Tell me
can't
about
he,
it.
why can't he sell the property to the homeowner?
Well, because it was a planning board decision.
Yeah.
Part of his use variance, his plan, his planning board
Before
decision.
we were on it.
Component.
This was a restriction, when, to build those houses, he had to
Yeah,
provide
recreation.
recreation.
for the neighborhood.
Yeah, but things have evolved or changed, and now we find ourselves in a situation where, to digress to the public walks again, they were fine until neighbors started to put 6-foot privacy fences. There weren't 6-foot privacy fences back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And all of a sudden, people started to put privacy fences up, and it became an alleyway. And we had streetlights on there, and all it became was a dark alley with a little light at the end of it. And there was a tremendous amount of problems, but that's how we know how much the lights cost. We removed 3 lights. We got rid of that. And
So what would
this
you
is the
like
same
to see?
thing.
I'm just asking for my own, what would you like to see happen?
Well,
Either one of you.
A couple of years ago, when we came, they were going to divide the land up between the 4 of us.
And
Well, it was.
is that still like something that you?
Yeah, I would
maintain?
take the ground, I would
Okay.
take the tax liability, I mean, it's
Do you
unbuildable.
think that would two people
So
feel
it's
safe?
basically, if we can clear this easement, you guys are gonna take, you and your neighbors are gonna take this ground over.
Yeah, me personally, I would like to set up where, I know before they were talking about the same thing that they said on the other houses. Well, what if somebody wants to build something back there? Well, you just make it restricted. restriction on it, you can't build another house.
It's landlocked.
It's landlocked, you don't have street frontage, you call
Unless
it.
they're doing-
Don't they use that for access, right? Don't
No,
do that.
no, it's not.
The back gate, the kids walk
That's
through.
not a true
I
access
was,
point.
with Bernie was saying,
If they,
That's not a true access point.
I mean, they got the back gate, and the guy comes around every morning. and
Yeah,
opens
but it's
that
still
back
not,
gate.
it's not a true access.
Oh, I'm just
point.
saying, there's this guy from Brighton, I'm off that gate every morning.
yes, he does.
Okay.
But it's not a true access point.
Yeah, I mean, the school understands the problems that the neighbors had when we closed the public walks. We went to the school also. The school had no problem with
Instead
it.
of walk 3 streets down and go up the main.
It was an extra couple of blocks.
I mean, that's the difference in the actual true entrance way.
You know, the problem is people, they do wrong things and they lose the benefit that they had. You know, we would not even be having this discussion if we didn't have all the different activities going on and stuff. I mean, the basketball court would still be there, correct? The playground would be there if we didn't have all the problems.
I think I remember one day.
Yeah, but I said about 2 years.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
That's it.
Entertain a motion to close the public portion.
I make a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second. All in favor?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.